Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. So this time I thought I would just try and stick to a single topic. I know it sounds crazy, and focus on pronouns. That pesky little topic of pronouns when it comes to those of us who are transgender and non-binary and that kind of thing. I do get a lot of people asking me all the time nowadays, what pronouns I prefer. And I actually struggle with that one. This might be because I'm older, because I kind of came to a realization about being trans and wanting to transition later in life. I'm 47 now. I kind of started thinking about it between 44 and 45 and kind of came out and started working on my transition at 46 and everything. So for well over 40 years of my life, I went with female pronouns because I didn't know anything else. Even when I was a young kid and I insisted I was a boy, the concept of pronouns just didn't resonate with me at the time, so I never kind of insisted on he, him pronouns back then. I just kept saying, no, I'm a boy, not a girl. That's always been my number one thing, is I never liked being referred to as a girl, which is one of the reasons why even after I kind of came to accept that I was a girl, because there was no other option at the time back in the 70s, I kind of embraced tomboy, because at least it had the term boy in it. I just never liked being called a girl, but pronouns themselves, I didn't really care about one way or the other. And that's the one thing for me right now, is I still don't really care that much about my pronouns. Not as much as younger trans people do, which, everyone has their preferences and what causes them dysphoria and that kind of thing, and pronouns just never have for me. And for right now, yes, my appearance is slowly changing, my voice is changing, etc., and everything, but I am still not passing as male. With as often as I get called ma'am all the time. As long as they don't call me miss. That's another trigger for me, is don't call me girl. So anyone who tells me, you go girl, it's like, just no. Just no, 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 no. And referring to me as miss instead of ma'am. I've never been a huge fan of ma'am, but I don't like miss either, because to me, miss is for a young woman, unmarried, or at the very and for children. It's a diminutive form of Mrs. or Ms. And I come from the generation, I'm Gen X, and we were very much of the, once you're an adult, regardless of whether or not you're married or not, that we kind of embrace the term Ms. instead of Miss. Like, Miss was for kids and everything, but once you were an adult, it shouldn't matter if you were married or not, you should be Ms. And so I kind of embraced being Ms. for a very long time, and everything. So and of course, once I was married, Mrs. worked as well. I was fine with it, but I still kind of, I think I pretty much always used Ms. when I filled out forms and that kind of thing, because I tend to prefer that moniker. At least I did. And at this point, since I have not legally changed my gender marker yet, I probably won't until, I think I'm gonna more seriously start to look into doing that after my my appearance is to the point where I start getting why am I struggling today? When people actually start calling me sir instead of ma'am, when I'm starting to pass, as the parlance goes, when people look at me and they see male instead of female, which, I'm kind of in this weird in-between state right now, where I know I'm starting to look a little bit more masculine, but there's still enough feminine features where I just kind of look like a butch female more than so it's just kind of this weird in-between state right now. So at this point, like, if people want to say he, she, he or she or they or whatever, I kind of go with all of them. I'm still debating between whether or not I'm more of an effeminate male, or, you know, a gay effeminate male, or if I am more of a non-binary person. I'm still kind of working my way through that. I mean, because there's elements of both that I've heard described that kind of work with me, and so, you know, I totally don't want to invalidate the whole non-binary concept, because I do agree that gender is more of a spectrum than we have given it credit for. But at the same time, you know, I am from an older generation, and yes, I kind of grew up with the whole binary concept of gender and sex and everything else, and so, you know, part of my brain is still kind of fighting on that front. So there's a lot of, you know, generational bias going on in my head, even within myself, about myself. So that's a huge struggle for me when it comes to that, and when it comes to pronouns and things. I'll admit, for the longest time I did kind of fight against using the they/them pronouns for gender neutral, just because, as a grammarian and a writer, you know, for me that's always been a plural, but I've kind of come to accept and embrace it at this point, because it has become the parlance, it has become part of the lexicon of our language, and I'm just not going to, you know, argue against it, because, you know, it just is. I did find out, well over a year ago, but Merriam-Webster produced this article where they were like, hey, guess what? We actually used to have a gender-neutral pronoun, but no one used it, so we took it out of the dictionary. And the gender-neutral pronoun, they introduced it like back in the 1930s, and it was called, I'm trying to think of the right pronunciation, but I think it's thon, Thon, which I believe is a combination of this one. So referring to someone as this one, or that one, yeah, this one or that one. So this one for yourself, that one for referring to someone else, as a gender-neutral pronoun concept. And it was in the dictionary until the 1960s, but since it was never adopted and used by very many people, if any at all, because I'd never heard of it before, they just said, well, no one's using it, we'll just take it out of the dictionary. And so I was like, oh, well, you know, too bad we didn't know about that before they then became more accepted in society, because I actually like that one. I kind of like thon as a gender neutral, like he, she, thon, but instead of he, she, they. But you know, it is what it is. The language kind of evolves the way it does, and you know, a big part of it is dependent on adoption by the majority of society. And even though there are people out there that still argue against the they/thems and non-binary and everything else, I think it is the majority accepted gender neutral. I know there's a few others. I think there's a Z, Zim, and I forget. There's a bunch of other ones that have been presented and things, but the adoption of those has not been as forthcoming. So, yeah, it is what it is, right? But you know, when it comes to asking me, well, what pronouns do you prefer? It's like, I don't know. That's my big answer right now, and I've actually had people like press me on this, and I'm like, I literally don't know which ones I prefer right now. I mean, I am migrating away from her and she, just because the more masculine I become, the less they sound or feel right. Not that they ever felt right, but they never felt completely wrong either. Like I just literally just didn't care. They, them doesn't, I mean, it kind of works, but it doesn't quite feel right. But he, him doesn't quite feel right yet either. So I'm kind of like in this nebulous void of the I don't know and I don't care. So, like, if you see me and, you know, whatever pronoun clicks with you when you're referring to me at that moment, go with it. I'm fine with it. Use "thon" if you prefer. Let's get that one. Let's get that one back. But other than that, yeah, I just personally I don't really care yet. If I get to a point where I do start to care and start having a strong preference over one pronoun over another, I will probably make another video and say, hey, by the way. You know, obviously I'm becoming more masculine, and eventually I will get to a point where I will be presenting and passing. Well, I mean, I'm already presenting as masculine, but when I start passing as masculine, that's when I will be more inclined to say, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and let's stop with the her and she already. You know, like I'll be like, hey, you see this beard here? You know, which you know, I am still. Growing, you know, my facial hair is growing in, but I do keep it shaved because it's still pretty patchy, and it's most of it is down here, and I don't like that look on myself. I will not judge other people who grow the neck beards only, because that's the only place they can grow hair, and they're so excited to have facial hair. So I'm not going to judge anyone who does that, but it's just like I don't like it on myself, and so just don't look for me running around with just a neck beard, because it's just not my look. I would love to have a bit of a scruff look on my face, but that's not something that's possible yet. I can let it grow out for like 2-3 weeks, and you can still not really see it. I mean, if you look closely, you can see it, but yeah, it's just not growing out very long yet. So I'm like, yeah, let's keep it shaved and keep it, because it does the hair down here. If I let it grow out, it gets really itchy. So for right now, I'm like, let's just shave. So, and I'm now getting off that single topic of pronouns, aren't I? So let me kind of wrap this up and try and keep this as a shorter video, and see if I can kind of stick to shorter videos going forward, maybe. Cross your fingers. Thank you so much for joining me this time, and until next time, take care. Bye.